On a winter night when most students were heading back to their dorms, a young woman took one last walk across campus and never came home. But the question that still haunts Briarwood College isn't just what happened to her. It's who was quietly pulling the strings long before she disappeared. Tonight, we dive into a case where love blurred into control, where a brilliant mind became a weapon, and where the truth was buried under layers of lies, until a single recording exposed everything. What you're about to hear isn't just a crime. It's a warning. And by the end, one detail will change the way you see this entire story. Welcome to Unforgotten Crimes. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. A cold January dusk settles over Briarwood College, the kind of fading light that turns the red brick buildings into looming silhouettes. Sophomore Emily Carter, a meticulous psychology major known for her warmth and quiet determination, appears on grainy CCTV stepping out from the library's eastern exit. Her scarf, a soft burgundy knit gifted by her mother, trails behind her in the wind like a ribbon marking each step. Her phone screen glows repeatedly, 3 missed calls, then 4, but she doesn't answer. She only tucks the device deeper into her coat pocket, her movements tense, almost rehearsed. Narration overlays her final routine with an unnerving softness. Emily walked this path nearly every evening, but tonight, something felt different. The camera zooms on her looking over her shoulder, the motion subtle yet unmistakably wary. When investigators later slow the footage, they note how her pace shifts. Fast, then slow, then fast again, as if she's weighing her options with every breath. Campus security officers interviewed years later recall seeing her around that time. One describes her as focused but distracted, like she was trying not to be followed. Another mentions a faint tremor in her hands when she reached for the door leading outside. None of them paid attention then. Finals were approaching, and students carried their stress everywhere. Emily crosses the quad, snow crunching beneath her boots. A pair of distant figures walks in the opposite direction, but she barely glances at them. Instead, her attention locks onto the narrow walkway that connects the academic center to the dormitory row. A path half-lit by failing bulbs, notorious for having no cameras past the initial entry point. She hesitates only once, adjusting her scarf, before stepping into the dim corridor of trees and shadow. That is the last clear image anyone would ever capture of Emily Carter. Investigators would later discover she never made it to her dorm. Yet her phone continued moving across campus for 2 more hours. In the wake of the unsettling final footage of Emily disappearing into the dim walkway, the documentary rewinds, pulling the audience into the familiar, bright world she inhabited before fear crept into her life. The screen shifts from grainy night CCTV to warm daylight inside her dorm room, where stacks of color-coded notebooks fill her desk. Each page is covered in careful handwriting, diagrams, and highlighted reminders about developmental psychology. Friends say Emily loved structure because it made her feel safe. Her roommate, Lily Matthews, appears in an interview, her voice trembling as she recalls those everyday details. The way Emily lined up her pens, brewed peppermint tea before studying, hummed softly when anxious. Lily admits, she carried herself like someone who had everything under control, but sometimes she'd stop mid-sentence, like her mind had wandered somewhere darker. To deepen the portrait, investigators analyze voice notes from Emily's coursework, short reflections meant for class submissions. Instead, they reveal glimmers of emotion she rarely showed aloud. In one, she confesses she's been feeling watched, quickly laughing it off as overthinking. Another contains a pause long enough to unsettle even seasoned detectives. I know I'm supposed to trust people, but what if trusting the wrong person ruins everything? Emily's parents are interviewed next, sitting close together on their living room couch. They describe her as the kind of daughter who called twice a week, sent photos of stray cats she found on campus, and always asked about their health. But her mother admits that, in the last month, Emily sounded distracted, almost hesitant, like she wanted to say something but held back. The documentary lingers on a diary entry recovered from Emily's nightstand, written in her neat handwriting just 1 week before she vanished. "I'm proud of myself for finally setting boundaries, even if he hates me for it." The page ends abruptly, the final line trailing off as though she stopped writing mid-thought. A quiet unease settles over the narration, framing Emily not just as a victim, but as a young woman quietly fighting a private battle no one fully understood. Then detectives uncover a hidden folder on Emily's laptop labeled Boundaries, hinting that she left a record meant to be found. The discovery of Emily's hidden Boundaries folder sends investigators deeper into the most private corners of her final months. Transitioning from the warm portrait of who she was, the documentary sharpens in tone as the screen fills with her digital traces, screen recordings, screenshots, and typed reflections she organized with unsettling precision. At the center of almost every file is one name: Ryan Hale, her polished, charming pre-med boyfriend with the kind of reputation professors praised without hesitation. The messages begin innocently enough, full of encouragement and routine check-ins, but they gradually shift into something tighter, more constricting. Ryan asks for her location repeatedly, sometimes 3 times in the same hour. He questions study partners, especially if they're male, framing his concern as protective. In several recordings, Emily documents conversations in which Ryan insists she communicate better, though her replies sound drained, apologetic, fearful of upsetting him. Detectives note the pattern instantly, affection turning into surveillance. Friends interviewed recall Ryan's habit of appearing unannounced, casual drop-ins, they call them, though Emily never seemed excited to see him. Lily remembers studying late one night when Ryan knocked on the door, smiling smoothly as he claimed he happened to be in the area, even though he lived on the opposite side of campus. Emily's posture that night, Lily says, was rigid, her laughter forced. The documentary then cuts to a revealing piece of evidence: a bus stop CCTV clip from 2 weeks before Emily vanished. Emily stands with her backpack slung low, scrolling on her phone, visibly irritated. Ryan appears behind her, closing the distance with a tight smile that doesn't reach his eyes. She steps away, he steps closer. Her expression says everything she never told her friends. Narration grows somber as investigators outline the escalating pattern: jealousy, control, subtle intimidation, echoing the notes Emily left behind for herself. And then comes the most chilling discovery on her phone, buried in a secured notes app, written without explanation: "If anything happens, check Ryan." The chilling note on Emily's phone, "If anything happens, check Ryan," ushers the documentary into a new phase. After presenting the early red flags, the narrative widens to examine the man behind them, revealing a disturbing duality in Ryan Hale that few ever noticed. The screen brightens briefly with archival photos. Ryan in his EMT uniform, smiling at charity events, shaking hands with faculty members. Professors interviewed describe him as disciplined, remarkably polite, and the kind of student you trust instantly. To the outside world, he was the textbook example of a promising young professional. But digital forensics paint a darker portrait. Investigators sift through the contents of Ryan's devices, uncovering private searches that clash violently with his polished exterior. Phrases like "how to access deleted messages" sit beside "track someone by phone without permission," followed by several late-night queries about emotional manipulation signs and how to regain control in a relationship. Experts note that his browsing history mirrors the psychological arc of someone slipping slowly into obsession. A former coworker from a local cafe appears on screen, recalling how Ryan would snap sharply at customers over small mistakes, then instantly revert to a calm, friendly demeanor the moment a supervisor appeared. "It was like watching someone flip a switch," the coworker says, still unsettled. "He could turn it on and off whenever he needed to." The documentary then turns to Lily, Emily's best friend, who remembers one night when Emily whispered, voice trembling, "He's not who you think he is." Lily admits she pressed for details, but Emily brushed the moment aside, claiming she was overreacting. Whether it was fear, hope, or a desperate attempt to avoid conflict, Emily stayed in the relationship, something investigators say is heartbreakingly common in coercive dynamics. Narration reflects quietly on how easy it is to miss danger when the threat disguises itself behind charm, intelligence, and public admiration. Ryan's two faces existed side by side, and Emily had been trapped somewhere between them. Then detectives uncover a startling digital footprint. On the evening Emily vanished, Ryan had attempted, multiple times, to access her student portal, a discovery that shatters the image he worked so hard to maintain. Ryan's attempted access to Emily's student portal reframes the timeline, and the documentary moves into the critical evening that marked the turning point in their relationship. After establishing his growing instability, the narrative transitions to their final date night, the last time Emily was seen in public with him before she disappeared. A slow pan across the restaurant exterior sets the mood. Warm lights inside, frost gathering on the windows outside, unaware diners laughing over meals while something far darker brewed at a corner booth. Restaurant CCTV footage shows Emily and Ryan seated close together, plates half finished, their posture stiff despite the occasional forced smile. At first glance, they resemble any young couple navigating stress and exams. But investigators enhance the muffled audio captured near their table, isolating a brief moment when Emily leans forward and says, softly but firmly, "I need space." The shift in Ryan's expression is instant. His shoulders tighten. His fingers tremble around his glass. Though he forces a smile, the documentary freezes the frame just long enough for viewers to recognize the flash of anger buried beneath. Receipts timestamp the end of the dinner precisely. Ryan paid the bill abruptly, stood, and walked out before Emily even rose from her seat. Outside, she's captured pacing beside the entrance, arms wrapped around herself, glancing in the direction he went. The winter wind lifts her hair as she pulls out her phone, hesitating over a message she never sends. Later that night, Emily recorded a diary voice memo, found after her disappearance, her voice trembling. "He didn't take it well. Something in his eyes scared me. I don't know why, but I felt like I needed to get away fast." Investigators replay that line repeatedly, calling it the moment her instincts finally surfaced after months of unease. The documentary narrows in on the hours following the dinner, tracing Emily's route back toward campus, unaware she was walking into danger. Then a neighbor comes forward, reporting they heard a man arguing with someone who wouldn't answer back near the wooded trail just an hour later. The neighbor's report of an unseen argument near the wooded trail shifts the investigation sharply, and the documentary transitions into a deeper unraveling of Ryan's version of events. In interviews, Ryan insists he went home immediately after dinner, claiming he needed time to think. His tone is calm, rehearsed, almost confident. But investigators are already comparing his statement with hard data. The GPS logs tell a different story. Instead of heading toward his apartment, Ryan's phone traveled in the exact direction of the wooded trail, the same place Emily vanished. Detectives broaden their search and discover something even more alarming. A second phone, registered under a fake name but linked to Ryan's billing address. Its activity reveals late-night logins to Emily's social media accounts, repeated attempts to access her emails, and visits to her class schedule page. Digital analysts note the pattern with quiet gravity. This wasn't impulsive behavior. It was monitoring. Lily, still shaken from recounting Emily's final days, reveals another previously unreported incident. Months before the disappearance, Emily confided that she once walked into her room to find Ryan reading her private journal. He claimed he was worried about her stress levels, but Emily told Lily she hadn't written anything about stress, only about him. Investigators highlight this moment as a chilling milestone in Ryan's growing obsession. Yet the episode introduces the documentary's first red herring. CCTV footage shows a campus groundskeeper near the trail shortly after the time Emily was last seen. He lingers, looks around, and vanishes into the trees. Rumors swirl and social media erupts. But when detectives track him down, his timeline checks out completely. He was repairing a light fixture and clocked out minutes later. The suspicion dissolves as quickly as it appeared. With the false lead dismissed, the investigation closes back in on Ryan. Search teams comb through the trail, inch by inch, guided by cadaver dogs, drones, and forensic teams. Then, Halfway down a narrow path, they find something devastatingly small yet unmistakable. A torn piece of Emily's burgundy scarf snagged on a branch, and beside it, Ryan's fingerprint preserved in dried mud. The discovery of Emily's torn scarf and Ryan's fingerprint shifts the tone of the documentary from suspicion to psychological dissection. After the physical evidence ties him to the wooded trail, investigators turn toward understanding how Ryan reached the point of violence. The screen cuts to clinical offices and dimly lit interview rooms where behavioral experts analyze his escalating pattern. They describe a classic psychological arc, beginning with insecurity, growing into silent monitoring, and eventually mutating into volatile obsession. Digital forensics deepen this trajectory. As specialists comb through Ryan's devices, his search history becomes a haunting reflection of his unraveling mind. Earlier queries about relationship communication are gradually replaced with darker terms. How long does it take to calm a hysterical person? Untraceable sedatives, and delete location data without detection. Investigators note these searches began appearing late at night, sometimes minutes apart, as though he were spiraling in real time. Digital reconstruction software provides another disturbing insight. Analysts track how Ryan spent hours scrolling through Emily's photos, screenshots, selfies she sent him, candid snapshots he saved without her knowing. He revisited them repeatedly at 3 a.m., zooming into her face, particularly her eyes. A psychologist explains that fixation on a single emotional detail can signify a growing sense of ownership disguised as affection. But the documentary, true to its investigative pacing, introduces a second misdirection. CCTV footage from a side road near the trail shows a mysterious car idling for several minutes around the time Emily disappeared. The engine stays running, the headlights flick on and off, and the driver exits briefly before getting back inside. Social media explodes with speculation, and detectives pursue the lead urgently. However, the car is soon traced to a confused delivery driver who had been lost and checking his GPS. The false suspicion dissolves, reinforcing how chaotic and misleading early investigations can be. With the red herring dismissed, attention returns to the digital data, now increasingly incriminating. A forensic technician uncovers a nearly erased audio file hidden deep in Ryan's phone backups. The file name is chilling in its simplicity, as though meant for him alone. It reads, "She Can't Leave Me." The chilling audio file titled, "She Can't Leave Me," becomes the eerie bridge into the reconstructed final moments. Investigators, now certain Ryan's obsession had crossed into dangerous territory, assemble a precise timeline using phone pings, environmental data, and the physical evidence recovered in the woods. The documentary shifts into a somber, atmospheric reenactment, blending shadows, whispered dialogue, and stark forensic overlays as Emily's last known movements are retraced. According to reconstructed visuals, Emily attempts to leave the argument first. Her body language, shoulders angled away, steps quickened, signals fear and decisiveness. But Ryan moves after her, blocking the narrow path bordered by dense branches. Detectives reveal a never-sent text recovered from her phone drafts. "I'm scared of what you'll do if I try to end this." The message sits frozen in time, a heartbreaking indicator of her final emotional state. Physical evidence corroborates the struggle. Footprints, 2 sets initially, then chaotic overlapping impressions, suggest a confrontation that shifted direction. Broken twigs form a jagged line leading deeper into the trees, and a small penlight belonging to Ryan lies half-buried in the soil. Forensic experts highlight the disturbed earth, noting drag marks and sudden compression patterns consistent with someone stumbling or being pulled off balance. Witness accounts intensify the reconstruction. Several students recall hearing a male voice, panicked, urgent, almost pleading, carrying through the woods shortly before the time Emily vanished. One describes the tone as someone trying to stop a disaster he created, while another insists the whispers sounded like arguments reduced to desperate fragments. Combined with forensic soil analysis that places Ryan precisely at the last verified location, the picture grows increasingly damning. As tension peaks, detectives reveal the evidence that finishes Ryan's alibi: surveillance footage from a nearby gas station. The The timestamp shows him entering the restroom minutes after Emily's phone stopped transmitting. When he emerges, he hurriedly washes mud from his forearms, avoiding the camera. It is the moment his alibi breaks entirely, pushing the investigation toward a far darker conclusion. And nothing feels stable. The gas station footage becomes the documentary's grim entry point into Ryan's unraveling, guiding viewers from the fractured alibi in the previous chapter into the suffocating aftermath of the confrontation. Investigators describe what likely happened next not with sensationalism, but through pieced-together movements, forensic timestamps, and Ryan's own frantic digital mistakes. A reenactment shows him emerging from the woods disheveled, breathless, and moving with a panicked urgency that suggests he already knew Emily would never walk out beside him again. He drags something heavy along the underbrush, pausing only when distant headlights sweep across the trail. His phone logs chaotic bursts of activity. Deleted texts, a factory reset attempt aborted midway, and a series of internet searches so desperate they blur into incoherence. Forensics later uncover accelerant residue in the dorm's outdoor fire pit, matching burnt fibers from clothing Emily had been wearing. Several students recall seeing smoke that night, assuming it was harmless end-of-break revelry, never realizing evidence was disappearing in the flames. Ryan's attempt to fabricate digital distance between himself and Emily becomes another fatal error. Detectives reveal a string of messages, allegedly sent by Emily hours after she vanished. Messages the documentary overlays with timestamps, highlighting impossible gaps, unnatural phrasing, and Ryan's own device being active in the same location at the exact moments they were drafted. The illusion collapses instantly, exposing the desperation beneath it. But the most chilling revelation emerges from the smartwatch data. Emily's device, still synced to the cloud, captures a sharp spike in heart rate, sustained for several minutes, before crashing into a sudden, unnerving flatline. Experts explain the reading as consistent with extreme fear followed by abrupt cessation of movement. The timestamp falls squarely within the window Ryan claimed he was already home, making his story irreparably impossible and increasingly sinister. Knowing digital trails alone can't reveal everything, investigators widen their search across every area Ryan could have reached that night. Days later, divers sweep the lake just beyond campus. Their lights catch on something sunken and unnatural, a weighted backpack. Inside lie Emily's missing items and Ryan's bloody sweatshirt. The discovery of the weighted backpack becomes the investigator's final turning point, and Chapter 10 opens in the immediate aftermath. The documentary shifts from suspense to methodical dissection, showing how science quietly dismantles every remaining piece of Ryan's story. Viewers follow the evidence back to the lab where specialists begin the painstaking process of cataloging, testing, and comparing samples collected throughout the case. Forensic analysts begin with Ryan's shoes, the soles packed with a mixture of clay-heavy soil and decaying pine needles. Under magnification, the particles match perfectly with samples taken from the wooded trail, specifically the small clearing where Emily's smartwatch flatlined. The lead criminalist explains that the soil composition is so distinctive you couldn't replicate it accidentally, especially at the time and place Ryan claimed he was miles away. Next, investigators reveal Emily's phone. Though shattered, its case still bears a partial fingerprint pressed into a crack along the edge. Enhancement software resolves enough ridge detail to confirm it as Ryan's. Experts explain that the placement suggests force, not casual handling, consistent with the phone being grabbed or ripped from someone's hand. Microfibers found embedded in the torn piece of Emily's scarf are then compared to fibers from Ryan's jacket recovered in the backpack. The match is conclusive. A reconstruction overlay shows how the two fabrics likely came into contact. Abrupt, close range, and during a struggle. Digital forensics deliver the most damning blow. Specialists recover fragments of a deleted voicemail Ryan left for Emily earlier that night, pieced together from corrupted data still lingering on her cloud backup. In the clip, Ryan's voice trembles with restrained anger. "You can't embarrass me like that." Analysts note that the message was deleted minutes after Emily's smartwatch recorded its final spike in heart rate. Interrogation footage closes the chapter. The detectives present each piece of evidence slowly, Deliberately soil, fibers, logs, audio. Ryan's confident facade cracks in real time. His leg bounces. His hands shake. His breathing turns shallow. He finally lowers his eyes and whispers, I just need a minute. Ryan whispers, Fine, I'll tell you what happened. And the screen cuts to black. The screen fades in from the blackout of Ryan's whispered surrender. The documentary resumes in the interrogation room, where detectives lean forward, waiting. Ryan's shoulders sag as he finally begins to talk. He admits he followed Emily onto the wooded trail, insists he just needed to explain, and claims the argument spiraled when she slipped on wet leaves. But the camera lingers on the detective's skeptical expressions. They know his version doesn't match the forensic timeline they meticulously assembled. The investigators press harder, sliding a small evidence bag across the table. Ryan's second phone, the one registered under a fake name. A digital expert narrates how the device had an automatic recording function triggered by elevated noise and movement. Unknown to Ryan, it had captured nearly the entire confrontation. As the audio plays for viewers, the truth emerges with chilling clarity. Emily's voice trembling as she asks him to stop following her. Ryan's voice shifting wildly between pleading and threatening, until a moment of sudden, violent escalation interrupts her words. But the recording doesn't end there. After a long stretch of ragged breathing and frantic pacing, another sound cuts through. Ryan making a phone call in sheer panic. The timestamp is minutes after Emily collapsed. Detectives initially assumed he called no one that night. Ryan said he didn't know what to do, but phone records exposed the lie. He dialed Professor Daniel Adler, a respected faculty member known for mentoring ambitious students, Ryan included. Interviews reveal a darker side to Adler's mentorship. Former students describe his obsession with emotional optimization and his tendency to push protégés toward controlling interpersonal dynamics. Digging deeper, investigators uncover emails between Ryan and Adler discussing maintaining leverage and correcting instability in romantic bonds. It becomes clear Adler's guidance had blurred lines between academic theory and psychological manipulation. The documentary presents the final twist with stark gravity. On the recorded call, Adler doesn't tell Ryan to get help. He tells him what to say, what to hide, and how to frame the narrative. Prosecutors prepare for a double-defendant trial neither family expected. The documentary transitions from the explosive dual arrest announcement into the solemn grandeur of the courthouse steps, where reporters crowd shoulder to shoulder. The trial becomes a national flashpoint, an unsettling blend of true crime fascination, academic scandal, and a young woman's stolen future. Inside the courtroom, cameras capture the tension thickening with every revelation. Prosecutors open with the audio recording from Ryan's secret second phone, its raw fear and fury echoing through the silent chamber. Ryan, once polished and confident, visibly crumbles as jurors hear him beg, threaten, and finally lash out at Emily. His composure breaks completely when the recording shifts to his panicked call to Professor Adler. That moment reframes the entire case. Not a sudden, isolated eruption of violence, but the culmination of months of manipulation and reinforcement. Adler sits stone still throughout the playback, occasionally jotting notes, occasionally adjusting his glasses. But his calm erodes when prosecutors project emails and message threads onto the courtroom screens. His words, couched in academic language, encourage Ryan to stabilize emotional disruption, control variables, and prevent relational dissolution. Defense attorneys argue he spoke purely theoretically, never intending real-world application. But the jury's faces harden as the subtext becomes undeniable. Emily's parents take the stand next. Their statements are quiet, trembling, and devastating. Her mother clutches one of Emily's notebooks as she reads Emily's own words about setting boundaries and wanting to feel safe. Her father, voice cracking, tells the court she trusted people who studied the mind, and one of them taught the man who killed her how to justify his obsession. After 3 days of deliberation, the verdicts land with a weight that ripples across the room. Ryan Hale is convicted of second-degree murder. Professor Daniel Adler is found guilty of evidence tampering and psychological coercion. Reporters describe the decision as a milestone case, one that challenges the limits of academic responsibility. The documentary closes with a montage of Emily's photos, her soft voice notes floating over fading piano. Her mother's final words linger. She tried to walk away. She should have been allowed to. A reform bill in Emily's name passes months later, but the final shot reveals unopened letters from Ryan in prison addressed to Emily, all dated after his conviction. Emily never made it home that night, but her truth did. Ryan's conviction brought justice, and Adler's fall exposed the shadows hiding in plain sight. Yet the unopened letters he still writes to her remind us. Some obsessions don't end, even when the story does.